Okay, so now we're on extended intervals. Previous two videos were about intervals on the first octave, from this G to this G. That's the first octave. When we go beyond the first octave, you have what is called extended or compound intervals, and that's where you get your jazz chords at, your extended chords. So if we went from this octave to this octave, the next octave it would be. Okay, so we've got higher notes. Anything past the first octave is an extended interval. So we've got extended intervals now. Make sure I'm getting through. Well, I've got all this written down here. Make sure I'm getting all this. Okay. An extended intervals, like I said, is beyond the first octave. So we went over the interval shapes. That was in random order, but we went over those shapes. Now we're going to go to the other shapes. From this octave to the second note, we go up. We go from 8. We went from 1 through 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going from 8 to 9. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But we don't count that because we count it as a 1. Again, we're back on 1. Or 8. 1, 8, 1, 8. This is always an octave. It's always a root note. There are no, there isn't an interval comparative to a third, a fifth, and a seventh any higher than that octave. In other words, from here, 1, it's an octave, 8, 9, 10. There is no 10th interval in music theory. It's always called the third. Same thing with a fifth. 1, it's a 3, 4, 5, 5. It's always called the fifth. Same thing with the seventh. 5, 6, 7. It's always called the seventh. You don't call the 14th, even though I counted up. You have to use those in relation. And well, I don't know why they do that exactly, but that's the rule. Is the only extensions are the 9, the 11, what? 11, the let's see, the 13. So it's 9, 11, 13, and that's it. Everything else is in relation to that. You have a flat 9, sharp 9, flat 11, sharp 11, flat 13, sharp 13. All that stuff. There's only a 9, 11, and a 13 after the octave. Okay, so here are those shapes. You have, that's an A note. Now, we talked about that's a second, major scale. 1, 2. The second step is an A note. Well, above the octave, the second step is a 9th instead of a 2. And I've come up with an easy way to figure out your intervals above the octave. What you do is you take whatever the number is and you subtract it from 7. For example, if you wanted to know what a 9th is in relation to your root, you would take a 9 and subtract 7. That would give you a 2. So you know that the step in relation to that, the upper octave would be a 2. Be your second step. So a second step and a 9th step are the same thing. The intervals, I mean. Okay, let's do that with an 11. 11 minus the number 7 is a 4. And a 4 is always a suspended note. Same thing with a ninth. In a second, they're suspended. There's your fourth there. Remember those string shapes. That's a G and a C. Okay. So your 11 is another C, and use that with the octave. So if you played a G and this higher note up here, you have a 11th interval. 7 plus 4 is 11, or 11 minus 7 is 4. So the 4th and the 11th are the same note. And then the last one is the 13th, which is a very common chord, very common note in jazz. It is the 6th, because 13 minus 7 is 6. Okay, so here's your interval shape of a 6. That's third fret, first low E string, and then you got the second fret, D string. Now the easy way to find your interval, instead of having to count up all the time, is to use the octave of that interval. In other words, if I wanted to find the ninth, I would just go from here and find the octave of this. That's the 9 right there. If I wanted to find the octave of a 6 and make it the 13th, I would go from here, find the octave. That's an E note, and E is the 6th step in a G chord, in a G scale. E is the minor of G. It's the 6th step. Same thing here, 1, 6. So if you play G, you've got a 13th. So if I just play this, I've got a 13th in there. Or it could be a 6, depending on certain factors. Whether it's a 6th or a 13th is all related to if there's a 7th in there at all. That's going to be getting way into theory for me to even explain that. But the 7th is a very important note in music theory because it dictates if the chord is a 9th or if it's actually suspended. If the chord is a 13th or it's suspended. Or if it's a 6th. A lot of that stuff. And I'm telling you, you need to get this right here, because this explains a lot of that stuff. And it's a pocket guide. See how thin that is? That's hardly nothing. And it's got a lot of good information. You pick this book up, it's really good. It explains all this stuff to you. So there are your octaves, your compound extended intervals. You've got your 9th. And if you play the chord, the G9, it sounds like a suspended note. Got your what did I say? 9, 11. Your 11th is your C note. This is the 4th, and that would be this right here. And it's only 11th. It's suspended now. It's only 11th chord if you've got the 9th and you've got the 3rd. A lot of people get G11 mixed up. Sometimes it's not really 11 because you have the 3rd in there. And when you have the 3rd, then it's not blocked off by the 4th. That's what would make that a suspended chord. Because the 3rd is blocked off. It's behind the 4th note. You're not hearing the 3rd. Same thing with the 2nd. You're not hearing the 3rd because the 2nd is in front of it. So a lot of that deals with whether a chord is actually 11th or a suspended chord of some kind. But anyway, there's your compound intervals. The next video we're going to go over how to make these into chords, how to make chords from scratch, how to modify chords that you already know to make these extended and jazzier. And that'll be a really good video. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.